All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Wednesday, May 28th of 2025. Looking ahead here, we had a 5-game early MLB slate get underway earlier today. Good luck to all of you playing that slate. For the rest of the day, we have a 5-game MLB main slate later this evening. We have a single NBA showdown, single NHL showdown, and then we do have golf teeing off early tomorrow morning. So I'm sure plenty of people will be building their golf lineups today. But for those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions. Get your questions in one of three ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. Just can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do this show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do this show on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So tune in any one of those days. Get your questions answered. We are back to a normal streaming schedule. So we will have a Friday show this week. We will have a Saturday show this week. So excited to get back in the normal rhythm here that everyone's kind of used to. With that said, let's get SaberSim up here. And we will jump into questions. All right, so we did have one question today. It kind of leads us into a slate demo. So first question of the day, need more details on how to create optimal showdown lineups. This did come from an Ultimate user. So I figured the best thing to do would just be to do an NBA showdown slate demo as if we are on Ultimate. We can always circle back to this MLB main slate later today and then do a starter demo there. So why don't we go over to the NBA showdown tonight? We have the Minnesota and Thunder. I believe this is game 5 here of the series. So we're going to go to a build. And first thing I would do, right, always build the max number of lineups your plan allows. So if you're on Ultimate, that's 5,000. You can adjust salaries if you want to. I've done demos where I've adjusted maximum down to exclude max salary builds to account for duplication. I've done demos where I've left it. You know, if I'm really just trying to like find the optimal lineup, I would probably leave it, right? So you're just going to box yourself out of more combinations the more things you adjust. So I'm just going to leave it here. I'm not going to apply any filters or rules. I'm going to make 2 small adjustments to projections. So like literally 0.01. So it has little to no impact on the Sims here. And we're still relying on like the optimals. The only thing I might do is just like do something super small where it's just like, don't show players that aren't projected. So show players with projection greater than 0, just so all these guys are grayed out here, right? Don't really want to look at them. Don't have to look at them. So other than that is really all the setup up front. And the reason for that, right, is when you click the gear icon in the build lineups, you're going to see the sliders are on 0, 10, 0 correlation, 10 sim diversity. Well, what we're doing here is we're relying on single game simulations. We're not inflating the effect of correlation. We're not using more than one sim. We are using one single sim for every lineup that gets built, putting the optimal lineup into your build, right? We're not making any adjustments. We're just relying on the play-by-play data, right, in the way that sim is set up. So you are getting sim true, sim optimal lineups in your showdown builds automatically, right? Especially if you adjust less things. Okay. So build finishes here. The contest sim did auto kick off because I have this toggle on to run the sim automatically. So right away, I'm sorting by highest ROI NBA showdown builds here. Okay. I'm sorting by exposure here. And now, I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of kind of trying to figure out what lineups I want to take with me into my contest. Now there is, a little bit more strategy involved with showdowns with regards to, okay, not only do I want to win the contest, but when I win the contest, I want to try and keep as much of the first place prize as I can. Now, you got to figure out how much that matters to you, right? Maybe you've never won a showdown and you're like, you know what, I just want to come in first, and then I want to kind of figure it out from there. Okay, you know that, well, that's kind of why we don't adjust max salary. That's why maybe we don't apply like a geo mean filter, right? The more adjustments you make, you're going to move further away from like the sim optimal lineups here and stuff like that, right? So say I leave all the max salaries in, say I don't care about, the ownerships and all of those things, right? If you want to simply see what the highest sim optimal lineups are, you can actually do that by coming in here and using the sim optimal sorting metric. What this one does is, let's say that, we're looking at this lineup here. Shy in the captain, Anthony Edwards, Chet, DiVincenzo, Alexander Walker, and Conley, right? Okay, well, when we actually adjust this aggregate metric to show the sim optimals, which I want to find here. Where are my sim optimals? Maybe I need a custom sim optimals value, save. And let's rename this. We'll just call it my sim optimals. All right, and then we go back to these lineups. Okay, my sim optimals is here, so I'm going to apply that. So this lineup has 11 sim optimals, okay? So what that means is that when we were building out your pool, this exact combination of players showed up 6 times, all right? So we're not going to put the same lineup into your pool more than once, but we do think this information is valuable, right? Because this would have been the optimal lineup in the contest sim 11 different times, right? So if like you had this lineup, you would have won the contest sim 11 times. Now the tricky part with ROI, right, where ROI kind of comes into play, is it's trying to figure out, hey, well, how many people did you split first place with, and how much money did you end up with at the end, right? So let's say you win this contest 11 times and you play this lineup, right? Well, what if every time you win, 20 people had the same lineup, okay, on average? So we'll do simple math, right? All right, so this contest that we're simming for is 100K to first. So let's just say that if 20 people, and we're just going to do first place prize. I know I'm not doing all the payouts and getting all crazy. Let's just say that, 20 people split it. You win 5K, and then you win that 11 times, okay? That means that you win 55,000 right at the end of things. Well, if you play a lineup that is less duplicated, maybe it's only expected to be duped. Maybe it's a unique lineup, right? Maybe it is completely unique. Well, then you win 100,000. You win less often, but overall you win more money, right? The ROI is going to favor that less duplicated lineup, right? And we think like, hey, for your long-term ROI, you want to play the less duplicated lineup, even if it wins less times, right? So like when we're sorting sim optimals, okay, there are some lineups with super high sim optimals here, but then when we go back to our ROIs, well, some of these lineups here might actually have very low sim optimals, right? Where they aren't the optimal lineup that many times, but maybe they're just a really low duplicated lineup in like the field lineups and things like that, and it leads them to end up with a higher ROI when it's all said and done, right? Again, I'm trying to make simple examples here, trying to give you like kind of like a framework of like how it works. So that is the kind of the trade-off that you kind of want to be aware of, right? It's like, okay, do I want to, we're always going to guide you to winning the most money, right? But if you're like, hey, I want to get that first win under my belt, things like that. Okay, then maybe don't do so much of the duplication stuff, or you do it a little less aggressively, right? Sometimes we talk about like filtering out 10 to 20% of your pool. based on like higher geo mean lineups. Well, maybe you just do like 5%, right? We're like, okay, I understand you guys think this is important. I'm going to do a little bit of it, but I'm not going to go overboard right away, right? And then you could always, study these contests as you're playing them. You can go back and analyze your sim ROIs and see how your lineups are doing and see what your average dupes are compared to other users. So there's like a ton of different things you can do there. And then the more slates you play, the more you can like iterate on that. But I just kind of want to talk about like the different ways this works and different ways to kind of think about it here. But anyways, getting back to the example, right? We're sorting by ROI. We have our 20 lineups, right? I'm going to add in some aggregate metrics here of average ROI, maybe even average salary. And we'll expand this a little bit more. There we go. That looks pretty good. All right. So we come in here, right? We're going to start analyzing our lineups. Notice our exposures and our leverages are pretty flat, right? No leverage for a captain higher than 6% here, right? That seems really good. That seems, the builder is diversifying, is spreading out here. We jump over to utility. Some more stands, right? A little bit low on like Jalen Williams, a little bit higher on Anthony Edwards and Chet Holmgren, like 18% leverage, 19% leverage, negative 22. Those are kind of the biggest ones. So it's like, okay, hey, they want to get to these guys and they want to be low on Jalen Williams. I personally think it's fine, right? This is like half of Jalen Williams ownership. So it's like, it's like a little low on him, not too low, right? Like, we talk about being like 2x to 3x a player's ownership compared to their exposure for like your leverages. Well, this is just like half in the opposite direction, right? So I think it's okay to have some stance, right? Not everything you do needs to be super flat and, leverage of less than 6%, whatever. So it's okay to be a little bit more leveraged here in the utility. But again, once you get to this point, right, it's really just kind of analyzing the lineups, seeing if you like them. You're like, hey, maybe you like Jalen Williams. Okay, well, then I go and I set his minimum exposure. I always set it a little bit lower than what his ownership is because sometimes it'll go up by itself. So I set this to 35% and it gets to exactly 35, right? Okay, well, then I could readjust it. Maybe I want to get to 40, right? And I want to just match. So when I set it to 40, he gets to 40, and now we're even, okay? And then now a bunch of other things move around. We're a little bit flatter on Edwards and Chet. We get some leverage now on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. It seems like lineups with him, there are probably some more combinations with him when we adjust the Jalen Williams minimum. So all those things are going to move around. You're still going to get the best lineups with the requests that you're asking for. But effectively, this is what I would be trying to do when trying to build showdown lineups, right? So those are the different things you got to be thinking about. That's how I would be using ROI and analyzing my lineups. So let me know if there's any follow-up. Happy to circle back on it. All right. Before we get to Brad's question, because this is MLB, going to jump here. Let's go, Andrew, 100K to first. Let's get that dub tonight. You're a USC Dodgers fan. Hell yeah. Yeah. Southern California. That's where I'm from. So always rooting. Sad to see the Dodgers lose earlier today, but they were super, super chalky. All right. Brad said, any chance we can get an MLB walkthrough of how you would work through building 150 for, say, the mini max? Yes, absolutely. So this kind of wraps up our ultimate showdown demo here. So now let's jump back to MLB. I did say I was going to do a starter demo, and we could definitely build 150 lineups for the mini max. X-Men said hello. What is going on? All right. So building lineups for this main slate here. Just in case you guys didn't know, this game was removed from the slate. They moved up the time due to like weather concerns. So good news is, right, if you look here, all the players have been removed from the slate. So you're not going to see them here. But just want to let you guys know why you're seeing it up in the games panel. All right. So with that said, we are going to build 500 lineups. We got to make our 2 adjustments, 2 projections. So again, super small changes here. I'm going to go 17.65. I'm going to, we've been talking about raising minimum salary a little bit based on what we've seen in flashback. So I would recommend doing that based on, the reviews I've done. I like to turn on this don't use batters against opposing pitchers rule. And that's about it, right? Up front, those are the main things that we want to do here. So then I'm just going to click build. We're going to do most of our work here in the post build. And then we'll make sure to switch this to 150. So just waiting for the lineups at this point. All right, lineups are finishing up now. So let's cancel this contest sim. We're not going to need it. And then we're going to switch lineups to 150. We're still going to use Saber Score. So this is a 6-game slate. So that is considered a large slate. And we're going to switch to... actually, it's not 6 games. It's 5 games. So it would be 2 to 5 games. We do small slate. And then 6 or more games, we do large. So it's technically small slate. The mini max. How many entries does the mini max have? I guess it depends which one you play. Okay, those are the flagships. All right, so mini max 23,000 entries, and then the other one is 28,000 entries. So both of them fall within that 10K to 50K bucket there. So that's fine. We'll go back to this build. And we're going to keep this on small slate 10K to 50K because that's where either mini max, whichever one you want to optimize for, is in this range. So cool. So I'm going to move some things around here. I don't need this to be so wide as it was for the showdowns. I don't have as many things to look at. This feels pretty good. All right. So sorting by Saber Score, we have 150 lineups. I'm going to scroll down to the last lineup in my set. I really want to be careful here with how much further I go down in my pool. We have an average projection aggregate metric. Now, right off the bat, I do like to look at batters and pitchers separate. So like no batter in more than 36% of our lineups. Now, there's a drop here, right? 36 down to 27 right away. And the batter in question is Aaron Judge, right? So very good batter, very expensive batter, and also has a lot of ownership. So like, okay, yeah, we have 36% Judge, but he's only 19% leverage. There are other batters at 25% exposure that are higher leverage than him, right? So it's always a little bit relative. Seems like our biggest stands here are kind of on Washington and the Yankees here, right? These are like, I could just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5. Well, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 10 out of our 15 top batter exposures are either the Yankees or the Nationals, right? Now, it's interesting because the Yankees are one of the higher team totals on the slate, and Washington is like the third lowest, right? So kind of interesting there. Could be, salary related. Hey, in order to get to more Yankees, maybe you need to pay down in some places to afford Judge, right? We'll kind of get into the nitty gritty of that and kind of figure it out. But here, right, I'm analyzing this. I'm trying to see where my biggest stands are, trying to see if I want to make adjustments to this. So like Matthew Boyd, 89% exposure. We have huge leverage on him, but he's also the highest owned pitcher. He's also the highest raw projected pitcher, right? And looks like he's also the highest value pitcher by far. So if like there's anybody to be over on, right, it kind of seems like he's an okay stand. But either way, let's say that, you know what, this is a little bit too much batter exposure for me. I want to, spread things out. Okay, well then we're going to start with the uniques, right? We're going to go from 1 unique to 2. That gets us down to lineup 169. We're going to go from 2 to 3. That puts us down to lineup 221. Now, remember, we kind of always talk about, right? Hey, for when we're using Saber Score on starter, we want to be more mindful of how far down in our pool we go, right? We generally recommend 25 to 50%. Well, if you're building 150 lineups, you're already past that 25% marker. So I would be a little bit more okay pushing the 50% envelope here. Now at 3 uniques, right, that gets us to 221. You know, if we go to 4, we're probably going to end up in like the 300s or more, right? 308. Okay, that's not the worst thing in the world. So if you are somebody where you're looking at your exposures at a unique of 3, and you're like, you know what, I don't like them and I want to go further, 4 is okay, right? Personally, I would stick with 3. I kind of like the exposures and leverages I'm getting. You know, now our top leverage is 16% instead of like 22. Our pitchers, we still have the high leverage on Boyd. We kind of went from closer to 40 down to closer to 30 here, and then we're flat elsewhere. You know, this feels good, and then I'm still staying in the top 50% here, so I do like that. I would jump over and look at other things. Okay, my lineups are still well correlated. 5 stacks, 4 stacks are dominating my highest exposed stack exposures. My team stacks, Yankees, you know, I can sort by projected runs. I'd like to do this sometimes, right? We're pretty spread out here. And then we're way under on Colorado, which has a by far low run total. So I do like to see that. Nothing really looks super out of the ordinary here. So I do like this. And then it's just about, you know, trying to figure out what your comfort level is. Say that again. Ultimately, you know, these are kind of the steps that I would be trying to follow, trying to build 150 lineups on the starter plan, you know, for the mini max, which I know is a popular contest that a lot of people play. So check this out. Let me know if there's any follow-up questions, as well as the showdown one earlier too. But I would basically be done here, and I'd be ready to submit these lineups and upload them to my contests. All right. Did miss doing the show. No, I was off for a little bit there. Appreciate you guys not forgetting about me and tuning in. I will be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, for our next show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.